Persons listening to this show should experience varying degrees of euphoria and might radiate a warm glow of truth from their entire being. This phenomenon sometimes lasts hours after a typical brain massage. If you are listening with another lights-on listener and they begin to glow, don't be concerned. This is a phenomenon normally associated with Pastor Scheidbach's patented brain massage technique and merely means the truth has set them free. The devil beware. Pastor Scheidbach is on the air.
Hello, I'm Dr. Scheidbach, pastor at the Lighthouse Baptist Church in Santa Maria, California, and your brain masseur. Get ready for your brain massage. Happy New Year. My friends, the battle for America is on.
The battle for America is on. The spirit of Antichrist has risen in our land against the spirit of Jesus Christ. What side are you on? Election 2020. Choose wisely.
The battle for America is on this year. We're going to decide to pull America entirely and finally out from under God, or we're going to reaffirm our heritage. Last week ended with an attack on Jews in New York. Crazy man entered the home of a rabbi on the seventh day of Hanukkah and stabbed 5 people. We are told the perpetrator showed no signs of anti-Semitism in his history. He's pleading not guilty on grounds of insanity. This week began with the church shooting in White Settlement, Texas. And as per usual, this shooting provoked progressives to display glaring examples of the insanity afflicting liberalism today. On the day after the shooting, Schumer treated us to another public display of progressive hatred for Christianity, especially Christians that support Trump. Iran-backed rioters mass at the U.S. Embassy in Iraq and threatened to breach. Trump's response provides a stark contrast to Obama-Hillary's Benghazi. Meanwhile, in America, this headline: a transgender man gives birth to non-binary partner's baby with female sperm donor, end quote. Right. A new group crawls out of the closets of devilish darkness, and now trans species, in the what's next department, or how could it get worse, here it is. People who identify as, giraffes, or foxes, or owls, trans species, other kind. And making the circuits on some obscure talk shows and YouTube channels is an Islamist cleric explaining how Muhammad honored women by laying out the rules for wife beating. Beat her up, just don't hit her in the face, And Michael Moore warns blacks to be afraid of whites. 2/3 of whites, he says, voted for Trump. So you know what that means to Moore, in his simple little brain. If you see 3 white guys coming toward you, you know that 2 of them voted for Trump. So you should move to the other side of the road because these are bad people. Now, either he is an idiot or he's playing his audience for idiots. Jihadi Iranians in uproar over American strike that took out one of their top generals, Qasem Soleimani. And what made Qasem Soleimani so popular among jihad-headed Iranians? And why are Democrats angry at Trump for taking him out? Unreal. And Biden threatens to nominate Obama to the Supreme Court if he's elected president this coming November, as if we needed another reason not to vote for Biden. My friends, it is time for your brain massage.
Truth served here, flavored with delectable wit, succulent sagacity, luscious logic. A gourmet meal for the mind.
A crazy man entered the home of a rabbi on the seventh day of Hanukkah and in his home stabbed 5 people. He's pleading not guilty on the grounds of insanity. We are told the perpetrator had a history of mental health issues and showed no prior signs of anti-Semitism. So, he simply wandered away 22 miles, by the way, from his home in Greenwood Lake to Monsey, a well-known enclave, by the way, of Hasidic Jews in Orange County, New York. And he's wearing a mask, so he brought a knife with him, and he went directly to a synagogue there in that city that's 22 miles away.
Truth served here, flavored with delectable wit, succulent sagacity, luscious logic. A gourmet meal for the mind.
In his car and drove off. He's pleading insanity. Well, I suggest his mind was under the influence and control of devils that guided him to one of their favorite targets. Now, you explain it. Here's a guy that lives in Greenwood that puts on a mask, drives 22 miles in New York traffic, that's all of half an hour, goes to a synagogue, enters the rabbi's home, starts stabbing people with no motive. Robbery doesn't make any sense. He could have robbed any number of homes in Greenwood, but he goes to a synagogue in a city 22 miles away. You get the idea. And Cuomo comes out with this statement, quote, "We see anger. We see hatred exploded. It's an American cancer on the body politic," end quote. Well, in normal circumstances, we would probably agree with that kind of a statement, but you got to put it in context here. Look in the mirror, fellow. You and your comrades in the Socialist Democratic Party today are the ones fomenting this hatred. Really, it began with Obama. You are stoking it at every opportunity. Who are the people attacking others over, okay, how about wearing a MAGA hat that you don't like? Do you really think Americans are not paying attention to this? So that's how last week ended. This week began with the church shooting in White Settlement, Texas. By the way, White Settlement gets its name from the fact that it was the only white settlement in the area at that time surrounded by Indian villages. So, you got, well, that's an Indian village over there and an Indian village over here. Here's an Indian village right there. That's a white settlement. You understand? Precious little is known about this guy. I'm sure if he attacked a black church or a synagogue, or if the perp was a Trump supporter, you'd get 24/7 coverage examining every pore of his face. Anyway, so with effort, I was able to dig up a little bit of information. He had been in trouble before, tried to dodge it with a mental health claim, but was considered able to stand trial after all. Anyway, he was in disguise when he went into the church, so the worshipers did not recognize him as the semi-homeless guy with drug problems and past involvement with the law that they had helped several times before, but had to put an end to the handouts for some reason that we don't know. Perhaps he asked for something inappropriate. The church was not willing to do that. Or he refused to make any real efforts to reform his life. So you have another case of a guy claiming to be insane, this time enraged against Christians, who decides to use violence to express his hatred. Thank God the Texans there were ready. The church had armed security in place, and the killer was stopped within 3 seconds. Imagine, Mr. Lennon, how many people this murderer could have killed before the police could arrive and were able to subdue this character. Because an armed good guy was present and ready to act, this monster did not even have time to identify a hostage to use to prolong the agony and misery of this whole ordeal. But as per usual, this shooting provides progressives an opportunity to display their own brand of insanity. What is with these people? Bloomberg is a blooming idiot. Now look, I don't know what else to say. Seriously, it's getting beyond flabbergasting. It's gone into the Twilight Zone or something. Are these people under the power of some zombie mind control blob out there that's taking over? But really, Bloomberg is running for president, for heaven's sakes. Keep this in mind. After the shooting in a church in Texas, where an average citizen with a gun shot and killed a monster that had crept into the church with a shotgun and used it to kill 2 church people, stopping that wicked evil person from murdering who knows how many more he would have killed if he had not been stopped. And Bloomberg says, quote, a person in the congregation had his own gun and killed the person that hurt 2 people. End quote. And I'm going to pause right there in his statement, and I want you to reflect on something. Think about the way he's framing this. He speaks of the church member who had his own gun and then says that church member killed the person. And the person that was killed, Bloomberg says of him, that person that hurt 2 people. Oh man, if you don't see the evil, if you don't hear the rattle of the serpent in that man, you don't have ears to hear. I don't know if you're seeing this clear. These people are unreasonable and wicked. That's a Bible expression, by the way. Paul asked his fellow Christians to pray God would deliver him and his team from unreasonable and wicked men. Listen, I mean, there is unreasonable, and that's a huge problem. Unreasonable people who do not think logically, right? Now, this can be on account of their emotions interfering with their clear thinking or because they're deceived or whatever, but then there is unreasonable and wicked. That word wicked means to have an intent to hurt. People who have malice against what is right, against righteousness. It's to twist and to reverse righteousness. These people desire to advance an agenda that will bring harm to us. So Bloomberg can't even bring himself to identify the perpetrator as being a killer, but he wants to implicate the hero who delivered the congregation from this monster. He'll refer to him in a way that makes him out to be the guy that did the killing. Oh, God help us. And then Bloomberg goes on and he says, quote, but it is the job of law enforcement to carry guns and decide when to use them, end quote. What? Oh, God deliver us from this unreasonable and wicked man. What is the thinking here? Deprive perfectly innocent people from being able to protect themselves. It would have taken, I think the estimate was 9 minutes for law enforcement to arrive, set up the perimeter, and begin breaching the building. I mean, we're likely talking about 10 to 20 minutes before this guy was actually engaged. All right. And he'd already shot 2 church members and aimed his gun at a third when he was put down. Bloomberg is saying he believes only the government should have guns. One of our founders says, I don't have time to go dig it up right now, forgive me. But one of our founders says something to the effect that anytime government starts saying that people should not be free to keep and bear arms, well, it's time to make sure you have them because they're getting ready to establish a tyrannical state over you. They're ready to imprison you and take away your liberties. Think about this. Bloomberg says, quote, you just don't want the average citizen carrying guns in a crowded place, end quote. Really? What I don't want is for citizens to be unarmed and unable to protect themselves against an idiot like this who doesn't care about your laws or your rules or what you want. I'll bet you, Bloomberg, I'll bet you're protected by armed bodyguards. I bet you have them everywhere you go. I'm so sick and tired of this uppity, self-absorbed sophists who think they're above the little people. And now we can't be trusted with guns, but they have the money to hire bodyguards to shield them. Well, I'll take Jesus' counsel on this one, Mr. Bloomingberg. Jesus said, I need a sword. He did not say you need to depend on the Roman government to protect you. He said you will need a sword. And I think I trust Jesus' wisdom above that of Bloomberg. Remember, Biden mocked the Texas governor for passing legislation allowing lawful gun owners to carry guns into places of worship. Guess what Biden said? He said, it's just absolutely irrational. It's totally irrational. Really? Well, Biden, you tell the families in that church whose lives were spared by a gun-toting Texan who was ready and willing to intervene on behalf of the good guys against the bad guy that had come into their church and was shooting people. On the day after the shooting, Schumer treated us to another public display of progressive hatred and disdain for Christians, especially Christians that support Trump. The disdain Democrats have for the American people generally should cause all their supporters to revolt against them. But they're blind. It will open the eyes of some, I think, thank God. But many are under the same spell, it seems, as it were. It's like watching a movie where some evil and malicious demon has grabbed control of the minds of otherwise rational human beings and has turned them into mind-numbed robots mouthing some of their most ridiculous notions. I mean, it's not possible that a normal human being in his right mind would think the way these people are thinking today. Chuck Schumer, on the day after the Texas church shooting, comes out and answers a question posed to him. And the question was, why do good people support Trump? So Chuck Schumer answers, why do good people support Trump? It's because people have been trained from childhood to believe in fairy tales. This set their minds up to accept things that make them feel good. The more fairy tales and lies he, speaking of Trump, tells, the better they feel. Show me a person who believes in Noah's Ark, and I will show you a Trump voter. Did you hear this? It's Schumer's own Bible and gunklinger moment. You understand, of course, that every evangelical that believes the Bible is the Word of God believes in Noah's Ark. This is what Chuck Schumer thinks of every Christian that takes the Bible seriously. And the point I'm making, obviously, and don't try to play that game with me. Chuck knows that Trump's support comes from Bible-believing Christians, and that's what he's talking about. Oh, no, you're not listening. That's not the point being made by this devil, He's publicly denouncing biblical Christianity. He is mocking Christians that believe the Bible. He is mocking our faith. He is mocking us. He is saying that the Bible account of the flood is a fairy tale. And he is denigrating all churches and parents that teach their children these Bible stories as teaching them fairy tales. He explains the phenomenon of Trump supporters as the result of people who grew up being taught the stories of the Bible. That's why they hate that Bible. It gets in their way. That's why they hate us Christians. We get in their way of their one world globalist agenda. I hope you're listening to what's going on here. I'm telling you, the lines for this battle are drawn between believers on one side and non-believers on the other, and they're forcing this. For Christians, the them is the non-believers and the us is the believers. And for the Democrats today, the them is the believers and the us is the non-believers. And sadly, the Democrats are the ones who've made it a them or us proposition. Okay, I must take a short break. My friends, hold on. I'll be right back.
The battle for America is on. Jesus sent his Spirit into the world, and the Bible says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Satan is the spirit of Antichrist, the end-time tyrant that will rule the world with death. America is divided between those who follow the spirit of liberty and those who follow the spirit of tyranny. The spirit of Jesus Christ or the spirit of Antichrist? Which will it be? Election 2020 will decide whether America continues as one nation under God or falls fully into the power of the spirit of tyranny. The devil beware. Pastor Scheidbach is on the air.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Dr. Scheidbach, pastor at the Lighthouse Baptist Church, your brain masseur and Paul Revere's lantern lighter, lighting the lamps of the church belfry arch, singling the enemy is on the march. And it's an enemy that would steal from us our liberties. Iran-backed rioters massed at the U.S. Embassy in Iraq and threatened to breach. Trump's response provides such a stark contrast to Obama-Hillary's Benghazi. It refuels our anger at Hillary and Obama for how they betrayed Ambassador Stevens and left American citizens there to be slaughtered by terrorists in Benghazi. And why? Well, to protect their fairy tale political narrative, Mr. Schumer. That's right. The Obama administration had worked hard to sell us on the idea that if we were only nice to the terrorists, they would be nice to us. And by the way, that narrative was a ruse to put us to sleep while they armed the terrorists. That was going down in Benghazi, folks. Financed terrorists. Oh yeah, remember, dropped $1.5 billion on them in cash. Obama, the terrorist cuddler, they were busy arming them and financing them. And all the while, at the same time, terrorist cells were being set up all over America, planning, plotting, waiting for the time to strike. What's in the way of them pulling that trigger? I'll tell you what it is: an armed and able citizenry. Americans with guns, ready to defend themselves and their families if and when jihadis attack. Sound far-fetched? Why do you suppose the higher levels of Democrats and others on the inside get so panicked when America takes real action against these terrorist countries? They immediately start crying about escalation. Don't escalate. They're so afraid of these terrorists. Now, when Qasem Soleimani attacks Americans, well, that's not escalation. When he sets up covert operations to undermine Iraqi sovereignty and attacks Americans, well, that's not escalation. If Iran kills American contractors or construction workers, that's not escalation. But if America does something about it, now all of a sudden it's all about concerns about escalation. You might not have a great deal of knowledge about World War II, but there were traitors like these at that time also who talked exactly the same way. And remember that Time magazine put Adolf Hitler on the cover of their magazine and hailed Hitler in their own way. And remember that some American industrialists were actively supporting Hitler. And listen, things are shaping up similarly today. But there are some differences right now. Now we have an entire political party that it seems is sold out to the enemies of America as founded. Why would anyone even remotely interested in protecting American lives and advancing the cause of liberty and justice for all not want an evil man like Qasem Soleimani taken out? I mean, that is the job God ordained the sword to do in the hands of civil government, right? That's the point of the sword, isn't it, so to speak? Romans 13, 1-6. Check it out. Read past the first verse, please. The whole point of civil government is to execute wrath upon those who do evil. When that sword's turned against the righteous, well, that's a different story. Soleimani orchestrated the murder of thousands of innocents. It was a clear and present danger to Americans everywhere. He was targeted by American officials for over a decade now, and this enemy has finally been killed in a retaliatory strike against Iran for committing acts of war against America multiple times. So why do Democrats, who have openly bowed and scraped to the terrorists of Iran, who have virtually Islamed, the word means to submit to Islam or to Allah, and kissed their hand and have attempted to bow the knee of all Americans to Allah, why? Why all this kiss up to a modern day evil empire? Well, because they are afraid. That or they have some other agenda. Perhaps they hope to use Islam to destroy Christianity in America. What do you think of that? And then turn around and destroy Islam. What is the end game here? What explains this weird behavior? Apparently, some Hollywood elites are afraid Iran is going to attack us here in America. Now, where would they get that idea? We get blamed for expressing concern about the sleeper cells that we are sure, and we have reports documenting this, all right, that are being set up all over America. But what about the Hollywood crowd? What are they afraid of? You got McGowan. She's an actress. I don't know who she is really, but anyway, she's reacted to Trump's attack on the Iranian general, famous in Iran for multiple attacks on Americans. So she tweets in a near panic, quote, "Dear Iran, the USA has disrespected your country, your flag, your people. 52% of us humbly apologize. We want peace with your nation. We are being held hostage by a terrorist regime. We do not know how to escape. Please do not kill us," end quote. My friend, this is treason. Plain and simple. What in the world is she afraid? That's like asking them to come over and deliver us from Trump. Does she know something about the plan to trigger multiple terrorist cells that are already planted in America that we don't know about? Aided and abetted, by the way, by the Obama administration and Democrats' refusal to protect our borders. Is that what's she afraid of? She knows there are multiple terrorist cells in place in America right now, and she's afraid the Iranians are going to pull the trigger on those cells. What prevents these terrorists, by the way, who have openly called for the destruction of little Satan, that's Israel, and the great Satan, and that's America? What prevents them from triggering their terrorist cells? I'll tell you what I think it is. It's an armed citizenry. Yeah, an armed and able citizenry. Look what they do in places where they don't have arms to protect themselves. That's what they would do here. Believe me, my friend, that is what they would do here. Americans with guns, ready to defend themselves if and when the jihadis attack. Men like that average citizen, Mr. Bloomberg, that you despise, who carried his gun to church and was ready and willing to engage when a domestic terrorist pulled a shotgun and started killing Christians. You see, that's what happens here when this sort of thing is tried. In other countries where the government has succeeded at lulling the people into giving up their right to protect themselves and turn that over to the government, they can round up the Christians there and slaughter them in the streets by the hundreds and even the thousands. The most persecuted religious group in the world today is Christians. That's got to stop. So what stops them from doing this in America? I'll tell you what it is: armed citizenry. Average people, Mr. Bloomberg, who are willing and ready to defend themselves and their families. Do you want to know why Jesus emphasized the need for his followers to arm themselves when he departed this earth? I mean, he said, get your scrip, that's money, get your coat. But listen, if you have to sell your coat to get a sword, do it. The reason is that he saw it coming, my friends. He knew that everywhere the spirit of Antichrist prevails, the ordained authority would be turned against the people of peace. That authority that was put in place to execute wrath upon evildoers would be turned against the true children of God. He knew that entire countries would attempt to confiscate all the arms and then use them to subdue entire nations to tyrants. Look, God ordained the power, but he gave you and me the freedom to choose who holds that power. Hosea 8 verse 4. God complained against Judah that she had set up kings, but not by me. You have heard it said by heretics speaking lies and hypocrisy, my fellow Americans, that all rulers are ordained of God. That's a lie. The Bible does not teach that wicked lie. We put men into power against the will of God all the time. And when we do, we lose our liberties. Listen, Christian, you have let seducing spirits teaching doctrines of devils deceive you into believing all sorts of foolishness, heresies, teachings that are contrary to what Christ taught us. Jesus said, get a sword. He emphasized this need. He said getting a sword is a priority. He said if you have to sell your coat to get one, do it. And upon the authority of Jesus Christ, Christians are to have a sword for self-protection. It's an inalienable right to keep and bear arms. The right of self-defense is natural. It is the command of Christ, our King. It is not to be used to advance the gospel. No, the sword of the Spirit is the only sword to be employed in that work. Coercion is absolutely forbidden by Christ. It's whosoever will may come. Every sinner is commanded to repent and believe, but no sinner is compelled to do it against his or her will. Why is the spirit that operates, that controls the left today, so intent on disarming Americans? And why are they becoming increasingly hostile toward Christians along with this? You've noticed it, I'm sure. They're becoming open in their hostility toward people of faith, that is the faith of Jesus Christ as Lord. Why are they so laser focused on this animus against biblical Christianity and against Americans generally keeping and bearing arms? Look, I'll be honest with you. I'm concerned that they are so totally under the power of the spirit of Antichrist today that they are sold out to the tyrannical spirit of the devil himself. The Bible says that Satan is the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now works in the children of disobedience. Nothing else accounts for this crazy business except the influence of Satan over the minds of people. I'm concerned that for decades now or longer, they've been laying foundation for a coup to take over America, to compel us to conform to their idea of political correctness. You've heard the insinuations. Hillary has said right out loud in front of God and everybody that Christians are just going to have to change their views. They are simply going to have to stop resisting their agenda, is what she's saying. They criminalize our faith, or try to. They want to pass laws here in California to make it illegal to speak openly against homosexuality. A disease-ridden lifestyle that's destroying people. They're turning the power of government to use the sword Christ intended would be used to protect our inalienable rights, to use that sword to force, by compulsion, to enforce laws that take away our liberties. They're reversing the purpose of the ordination. Well, Trump is using the sword the way Christ intended. Way to go, Trump. That's righteous use of the sword ordained to execute wrath against evildoers in the protection of our rights and liberties. Yep, it's right there in the book our founders quoted and alluded to so often, that early jurists recognized as the source of the wisdom that shaped our republic and served as foundation for our laws, the Bible. Romans 13, 1-6. So many quote that verse to encourage Christians to say they're supposed to bow down and let evil rulers walk all over them. That's not what that verse says. You might do well to actually read the passage and just go ahead and get past verse 1, will you? It's just like the devil to take a verse out of context. Okay, I'll need to move toward the conclusion for today's really big show. There's a theme here. Although in my passionate extempore speech, the bright light emanating from my prophet's boil might have your eyes blinking. But let's settle down, breathe. That's it. Now, in, out, in, out. Okay? All right. Focus now on the bigger picture of the brain massage session for today. The irrational thinking on the left cannot be explained as proceeding from any natural and certainly not from any good source. My friend, the only explanation for this is demonic. Now, I'll speak to it Sunday night during the Issachar Report. Don't miss it. How to spot demonic influence. How else do you explain the incredible phenomena of what amounts to mass hysterical illusion, or we might call it mass delusion syndrome? For 1 minute, ask yourself a few simple questions. Would anyone that you know accept this nonsense 30 or 20 years ago? I mean, it's insanity to deny reality, right? Isn't that like a fundamental of mental health? When someone begins believing what is clearly contrary to reality, isn't that the definition of insanity? Schumer says we Christians are the ones believing fantasies. You gotta be kidding me. He's the one buying into the notion of 51 genders. Here you go. A transgender man gives birth to non-binary partner's baby with female sperm donor. Okay, this is nonsense. So a woman that believes in the fairy tale that if she calls herself they, well, then she is by that declaration neither male nor female. Okay. She marries another woman who believes the fantasy that if she desires to be a man, well, she just has to have a surgery where they connect a male part and then she's a man. Now, you know, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Having a male part at birth does not make someone a man, according to them. But having one sewn on does. It's nonsense. Never mind that her entire cell structure, down to the DNA, is female. She had someone sew a part on her body, and that makes her a male. Okay, so you have two crazy people. One is a biological female, but she has her breasts removed and leaves the rest intact, so she's neither male nor female, and she calls herself they. And she continues to have baby-making organs. Now, the female that had one sewn on cannot produce sperm. Okay? So, this couple gets another tranny, a male, who calls himself a they. This is so nuts. In other words, neither male nor female, or something or other, and they collect sperm from him. And they use it to impregnate this woman who denies that she's a woman and calls herself a they. Okay, you got all this? Then this they carries the baby to term, decides not to murder it, but gives birth, and now the Democrats are rejoicing that a tranny couple gave birth. Ha 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 ha. You talk about fantasy. Look, at the end of the day, it's male sperm joining female seed, producing a child. Good night. If this is not living in total fantasy, nothing is. And so what's next? Well, it's already here. Trans-species. Yeah. Pretty soon they're going to pass a law that requires you to call someone a giraffe if they decide that's what they are. Not too long ago, they would have carried a guy like that off to the loony bin. I've lit the lamps in the church belfry arch. Now you let me know you see they're on. Email me by going to our website, BrainMassage.net. That's BrainMassage.net. Find the contact button. Send me an email. God bless you. God bless America. And I'll see you in church.